Welcome to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. I'm going to do something that I'm not sure I should do too often, but I didn't mind that the opportunity came up. A viewer talked about a singer-songwriter named Adrienne Lenker. She turns out to be a member of a band called Big Thief, and they seem to get a lot of critical acclaim. So I just found one of their critically acclaimed albums. It's called U.F.O.F, and it stands for UFO Friend. Seems to have a bit of a concept thing going on, though not necessarily a UFO thing. So I'm going to tell you about what I got out of the weird poetry that makes up these songs. The first track I really enjoyed listening to, it's called Contact, but I thought it might as well be called Comfort. It's kind of an everything at once aesthetic. It has an echoey, full spacey sound, yet it's also kind of sparse. There's not a ton of instruments there. And the guitar solo at one point sounds almost unaccompanied, as if it's just you practicing in your room, yet somehow being part of this bigger song. The lyrics, meanwhile, kind of combine strange things together. Wrap me in silk, I want to drink your milk, the lyrics go. And later it goes, she gives me gills. It's as if this motherly creature the singer is interacting with is at once moth, fish, and mammal. So I guess what this song does is it mixes everything potentially beautiful or comforting into one ultimate aesthetic and makes everything complete and thus beautiful and safe somehow. Track number 2 is the title track, UFOF, and it continues to do this thing by creating sort of a beautiful, peaceful feeling by sort of blending different aesthetics. So it describes a UFO, but it uses earthly plant imagery. It says, like a seed in the wind, taking up root in the sky. It kind of makes me think of Hayao Miyazaki movies, particularly Castle in the Sky. The way Adrienne Lenker's eerie high voice contrasts with the more normal, folky instrumentation below it also reminds me a bit of Kate Bush on her The Kick Inside album. I mean, Adrienne Lenker's voice isn't quite as out there as Kate Bush, but it's certainly a bit on the eerie high side. It's kind of funny. When I first listened to Kate Bush, I described her a sort of commercially passable version of Yoko Ono, and then like Adrienne Lenker's one step forward, her voice is like a commercially passable version of Kate Bush, whatever you make of that, because Kate Bush was usually successful. But anyway, I also thought the chorus on this song, UFOF, something about it particularly reminded me of my favorite Kate Bush song, Wuthering Heights. The next track is called Cattails. This kind of mixes that Kate Bush light aesthetic with a kind of Gordon Lightfoot sound, particularly his song, The Summer Side of Life. And the track itself is more or less a circle of life kind of song, using like the imagery of walking along a chain of cattails, I guess, from birth to death. The next track, just called From. Again, I feel that kind of weird Kate Bush kick inside energy, but this time because of the subject matter of the song. This is a weird song. The lyrics are simpler than anything we've seen so far, but the way they're delivered manages to make them very, very weird. No one can be my man. I didn't quite capture it there. But when I looked at the lyrics, it at very least appeared to be a song about a defiant single mother, celebrating, creating her child in this isolated natural space. But it could also very well be about a song about a woman literally having a child with a dog. Don't know if Adrienne Lenker meant it that way, if I'm being way out there in my interpretation, but it seems possible. Track number 5 is called Open Desert. This one uses haunting imagery to situate birth right next to death. So I said earlier, I feel like the sort of fetishization of space and UFOs kind of gives way to a different concept album about constantly thinking about death. I recently reviewed Sturgill Simpson's A Sailor's Guide to Earth. And a theme of this album seems to be how creating life kind of, reminds one that our time here is limited, that everything happens in cycles. So you can't do this beautiful thing of creating life without thinking of its fragility, how life comes with death. Why can't we do beautiful things without being accompanied by these terrifying cynical thoughts? I don't know, but the next track, Orange, doesn't make things any better. So I can't say why the song is called Orange. An unlikely thought I came up with is the song had a kind of fairy tale vibe, creepy Mother Goose thing. And one of the creepiest Mother Goose's songs out there is Oranges and Lemons. But anyway, this song seems to be about worrying about a child dying because she's playing hide and seek in some idyllic some idyllic garden by a forest, and I guess she gets lost in the forest and gets killed. Lovely. The next track, however, is called Century, and this one seems to move away from both the Mother Goose past and the space age future we've seen in the previous songs. And I get the sense just from a few words in the vocabulary of the song that reference mundane modern technology, like highways and like taking showers. Even the chorus, which is a sort of mundane pump-up line of, we have the same power. I guess it kind of just makes me think of a present-day society with electrical grids, even if all it's really saying is, yeah, we're a competent couple, we can make things work together. The next track is called Strange, though obviously many tracks on this album could be called Strange. For a moment, I thought it was holding on to this contemporary feel, maybe creating the imagery of going through an antiquarian bookstore, but then the imagery gets, well, strange. It references Luna moths, and moths have been a repeated motif on this album, as have doves. In this case, the line goes, see the Luna moth cry lime green tears through fruit bat eyes. So what's going on? Do fruit bats occasionally become insect-eating bats? And this is another lyric about death, or it's some weirder psychedelic image? I don't know. The next track is called Betsy. Adrian Lenker's voice kind of gets deeper here. It almost reminds me of Lou Reed, but the underlying production doesn't sound like Lou Reed at all. And the editing on the voice and the general music makes it sound like the air above Betsy's head is singing some mysterious song. The next song, Terminal, another Circle of Life song, reminds me a lot of Cattails in terms of its lyrics, though musically it has a bit of a different feel, a sort of charming music box sound to it. The next track is called Jenny. So another pattern I've noticed is Adrian Lemker seems to like to write choruses that just repeat the same phrase a few times. You know, she'll make a poetic effort with the verses, but she'll keep her choruses simple. No one can be my man, etc. And it's funny because at the time I was listening to this, I just been made aware of the relatively recent pop punk hit Emo Girl. And, you know, a lot of people like to hate on that song. And what really bothered me about it is that they didn't bother to write more than one line with the chorus. The chorus just goes, I'm in love with an emo girl. 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 Like basically the same thing 4 times. And it's just really annoying, really grating. And as a songwriter, I ask, why couldn't you just come up with a couple other lines, put some interesting rhymes in there? Don't just repeat the same statement. But what's hilarious is that while that is absolutely the fault and the downfall of Emo Girl, Adrian Lenker's repetition works very well. And I guess it's not just because she's making a statement like, I love this. No, her repeated lines are more like exclamations of emotion, descriptions of immediate sensory feelings. So in this song, Jenny, the ecstatic lyric is Jenny's in my room. And I guess it seems to be this excitement, I guess, about getting to be in a lesbian relationship, perhaps coming out or just doing this for the first time or just being really in love with Jenny. I don't know, but apparently it's really great that Jenny's in her room. And then the album ends with a song called Magic Dealer. It references a magic mirror. This time the production is comparatively sparse and less mystical. So by looking in the magic mirror, the singer is, I guess, you know, like the evil queen in Snow White, futilely wishing she'll be beautiful forever, even though, you know, we all age and become frustrated with change. But unlike the previous songs, which were morbid in a kind of mysterious psychedelic way, this one is just sort of understated, depressed, as if to say, yes, we can have these terrible existential thoughts throughout our life, but they don't have to all be this overwhelming psychedelic fever dream. Sometimes we can have these thoughts in a low-key way. And given that, you know, we have to make it through life and be happy as much as possible, that's really the best we can do. So really mixed feelings about this album, because on the one hand, undeniably great artistry. I think a lot of the individual songs I liked, but just listening to it as a whole, I became overwhelmed by the melancholy of it. And I've said before in my discussion of newer singer-songwriters, and Adrian Lenker, actually, she's only 2 years older than me, but I feel like I use this term to describe sort of anyone whose career started in the late 80s or the 90s up to today, after the classic singer-songwriter wave of the 60s and 70s. And what I've said before is in that classic wave, singer-songwriter music and pop music were almost one and the same. So you'd have these good lyrics, this sort of sensitive guitar picking kind of song that was also upbeat and poppy. Whereas it feels like a lot of modern singer-songwriter music, they feel compelled to differentiate themselves with pop. And as such, the music just ends up being kind of depressing. A lot of the time that is good and makes for great art, but it can also be a bit much. Hopefully this comes across as a good review because I'm very intrigued and impressed by what's here, but also a bit of a warning, maybe don't listen to the whole thing in one sitting, listen to it, I don't know, 3 tracks at a time or something. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.